So I have been given the task of introducing the speaker today. It goes without saying that Professor Narlikar needs no introduction. I myself had first seen him when I was in school, like almost in 3rd standard or 4th standard, because there was this program called Surabhi which used to come, and he used to appear on the program to answer science questions. And back then I never thought that I would meet him in person someday, let alone introduce him. And arguably he's the most well-known scientist in India. And he's most famous for his work on the alternate cosmology of quasi-steady state, about which he's going to speak today. Most of you must have generally heard about the current framework in cosmology, which is the Big Bang framework. You must have heard of the quasi-steady state, but as is true for even me, most of you might not be familiar with what it is exactly. So who else to talk about it better than Professor Narlikar himself? So without further delay, I'll hand over the mic to Professor Narlikar.
I am often asked this question as to why I don't like the standard cosmology. And when somebody asks this question, maybe at the end of some seminar I have given, I usually reply that I need a whole seminar to explain why I don't like standard cosmology. Then having given such a seminar, people ask another question, that if you don't like standard cosmology, why don't you have another one which you think is satisfactory? So it is not an easy question to answer, because I don't think it is that easy to arrive at the final answer on the question as to what happened to the universe in the past and how it came into existence and all that. These questions are much deeper than we realize, and very often we feel that reading maybe the media reports that everything is now worked out and only you need to do a little bit of polishing here and there and you have the answer. I don't share that particular view, and the seminar that I am giving today is a reflection of that. So when I talk about an alternative cosmology, I am proposing a model which is not the same or does not share the fundamental properties of the standard model, is significantly different. But I don't claim that I have solved the problem of the universe, just as I don't think you have solved the answer. So let us go on further. Here QSSC, what it stands for, I will explain shortly. So the motivation, as you have already gathered, is you can put it in a more historic context, that in 1990, some of us wrote a paper in Nature, which is given here, reference. It was a critique of the standard Big Bang cosmology, and these 5 people, R. Burbidge, Hoyle, myself and Vikrama Singh, we got together and had a 1 week intensive discussion with nobody else participating. We were just 5 of us, and finally we came up with a with this paper. The paper is called The Extragalactic Universe, an Alternative View. So the question, why is the standard Big Bang cosmology, SBBC stands for that, not the last word in cosmology? So we gave certain reasons in 1990, and because that was based on the standard cosmology as it was known in 1990. Now, today the standard cosmology has changed from the 1990 version, because new things have been added to it. So, one could argue that there are several unsatisfactory features of the standard model. One is, yeah, if we can turn off this light, might show this better. Yeah, that's better. It can be argued that there are several unsatisfactory features, like the beginning in a space-time singularity. That is, the Big Bang is basically a solution of Einstein's equations, which shows that at t equal to 0, there is a singularity, and singularity in any physical solution is considered to be a shortcoming. However, the Big Bang people have convinced themselves that such a singularity signifies a profound thing, profound event, and it is creation of the universe. So, if it is such a profound event, we do not worry if it is singular. So, I have seen people defending infinities and zeros in this fashion, but I perhaps am not on the same wavelength as they are when they argue like this. Then there is an occasional age problem, occasional meaning it is not found all the time, but once in a while it turns up, that you see an object in the universe whose age, if you estimate it in the normal way, is more than the age of the standard model. Now, such examples keep coming, and for example, if you look at a high redshift galaxy, that high redshift means it is not very long after the Big Bang, because high redshift is early in the universe. And so, the galaxy cannot be very old, but if its colors and the kind of stars it has shows that it should normally be older than what it is, what your cosmology is telling, then there is a conflict. So, people argue about it, and after a while they forget it. They say, let us let more examples come, then we will worry about it. So, this happens. Then there are too many epicycles. Now, this picture, when I show it, somehow I do not know why, but it makes the Big Bang supporters very angry. Now, the reason is the word epicycle has a bad connotation from its early history, which was the way the Greeks and later on other followers of Aristotle, they tried to understand the solar system by drawing circles, moving on circles, and adjusting the radius and speed of the circle so that you can fit the data. Now, so I have, this is a symbolic diagram that I have got here. It starts with a circle here, which is the original circle. This is the Friedman-Robertson-Walker models, the standard model with which Friedman started. Then omega lambda comes, that is you add the lambda term, and then you have n body simulations, dark matter, biasing, where you put the matter and dark matter everywhere. Inflation, I do not know whether there is a standard unique way that inflation is supposed to have happened. People talk of inflation as something that must have happened, but there is no specific model which is singled out and which is in the background of the rest of physics, fundamental physics. You do not see that, at least I have not seen it. If you can come after the talk, you can come and say, no, the inflation is this particular one and no other, then I would like to know, but I don't think I have found one. And then there is quantum fluctuations. We don't know yet what quantum gravity is, but quantum fluctuations are assumed to have played a major role in the shaping of what subsequently happened to the universe. So, you get all these uh, uh, assumptions built into it, and you have convinced yourself into a state of belief that this is natural and this is the way it must have happened. So, if you really look at it, you ask yourself, is there independent evidence for any of this? And you find that you don't. And the most of the present work is based on initial conditions and modes of evolution that are neither directly observable nor based on established physics. So, if you look at all the physics that has gone into it, you do not find that there is a you find that instead of established physics being used, lot of speculative physics is taken. Then we come to another one. It leaves out and this is something which I gave a hint in my last talk. It leaves out phenomena that are observed but not explained, like explosive high energy cosmic sources, anomalous redshifts, quantized redshifts, etc. These are being found, and I did not mention last time when I was talking of anomalous redshift. I showed individual examples, but people began to say individual examples can be exceptional. Have you analyzed the Sloan survey or big surveys? Now they have done that also, and papers are coming which show that there are anomalies present which you cannot statistically explain away. So, this is the problem. So, when I say all this, that this is the counter criticism that comes. If there is no other model, we have to make do with the standard Big Bang cosmology and expect these difficulties will either be solved or go away. So, what the supporters of Big Bang say is that fine, we have heard your criticism and it may happen that with more knowledge we will be able to solve those, answer those criticisms, but there is no other cosmology for us to work on. So, why do we, why should not we continue on standard Big Bang cosmology? So, in this connection, I want to draw your attention to a talk which Fred Hoyle gave and which I think is written up somewhere. I can find a reference. So, what he says that you start with 20 theories, let us say, for the universe, and of which you like one theory to be right. So, take the one standard and the other alternative. Now, initially you are very fair and you say that all these theories are equally likely. So, 1 out of 20 is the probability of your theory being correct. Then you go on presenting your theory in conferences and in write papers in journals. Now, if you keep on harping on one theory, then that the chance of its being wrong is 19 by 20, because 120 is a chance of being right. So, that 19 by 20 gets squared, because you are adding more and more lectures on that particular model. So, chance of being wrong is 19 by 20, then 19 by 20 square, then 19 by 20 cube, and if you keep doing it long enough, you develop a chance of disbelief in that theory to be 19 by 20 to the power n. Now, you take n to be of the order of 10 or 20, and you will find that the chance is almost 0, which means you have got a theory, you have got absolute trust in that particular theory. So, you ask what has happened in terms of concrete evidence to support that. The answer is no. People just keep talking at different conferences, and the oppositions or alternatives are not given the chance to present themselves to the same level. So, it's interesting to see read that paper. So, now to get around this criticism that there is no alternative, we thought we will try to produce one alternative, and we would be happy if it is discussed and criticized also. And our idea was to start with the basic philosophy of Victor Ambartsumian, an Armenian astronomer in the 60s and 70s, who argued, what did he say? He was speaking on the topic problems of extragalactic research in the IAU in 1961. So, he says that one of the important problems confronting us in the study of the outflow of is the study of outflow of matter and ejections from the nuclei of galaxies. The problem is the quantitative evolution of the ejected masses. Quantitative evolution, how they come out and how they are evolving. This refers equally to those galaxies of which the central parts show emission lines, and to the radio galaxies and to other examples with discrete ejections. So, now these explosive phenomena have increased since he made this statement, but already in 1961 they were becoming more worrisome. So, he was raising this issue. And then he says, see, he was so impressed by the data of explosion that he did not hesitate to sacrifice one of the holy cows of basic physics. The holy cow is the few facts at our disposal, that is Ambartsumian saying, show that these data may conflict with the law of conservation of energy and matter in its present form, and may perhaps require a generalization of this law. So, he is hinting at the fact that you see explosive creation of matter, and that is violation of the law of conservation of matter and energy. So, this was his idea. He was speaking more as an astrophysicist than as a cosmologist. So, he did not go into model building for his particular this particular line of thinking. So, in 1993, three of us, 3 out of those original 5, that is Hoyle, Burbidge and myself, felt that we should get together and build on Ambartsumian's ideas to make a concrete and quantitative model, which we call quasi steady state cosmology. That is why it is called QSSC. So, that is the origin. And there are several publications which have appeared in well known journals like MNRS, APJ, A&A, and Prof and so forth. And at some stage, that is around 2000, we felt that these could be combined together and put as a coherent theory discussing various aspects of cosmology and cosmogony. And so, this was called a different approach to cosmology. This was published by Cambridge University Press, and in year 2000. So, this is the book, and here it has a subtitle which is also somewhat tongue in cheek. It says, from a static universe through the Big Bang towards reality. So, you first discuss Big Bang and then you go to the reality, that is what is really happening. So, what is quasi steady state cosmology? What does this model say? Where are the, what are its parameters and epicycles? When you have a model, you always have some assumptions, and so do you have some assumptions which could be again criticized as epicycles? So, we will come to that. How does it explain the present phenomena of relevance to cosmology? So, any alternative model must do at least as well as the Big Bang in understanding the present observations. What new predictions does it make that distinguish it from the standard Big Bang cosmology? That is always a interesting observational result. That is, you say do this measurement, and if it give you this answer, one cosmology is right. If it give you another answer, the alternative may be right. So, the basic features are there is an underlying field theory for model, constructing the model, and the theory of gravity that originates with Mach's principle and leads to gravitational equations similar to general relativity with additional terms of scalar field. I had given a brief glimpse into this work in my previous lecture. So, the field equations look like this. This is R I k minus half g I k r plus lambda g I k, and then on the right hand side you get these things. So, the cosmological constants originates from the inertial interactions between particles in the universe and has the right order of magnitude, that is, it has got 10 to the minus 56 centimeter to minus 2. So, in this sense, right here the way this lambda comes in, I do not have time to explain, but it is again a Machian approach. It gives you a value which is in the right region. It is so it is different from the way inflation gives you a cosmological constant which is 10 to the power 108 times what it should be. So, you have a comparison right this, but the cosmological constant that you get here is negative. So, if the moment I say this, you will get up in arms and say what about supernovae? How do you survive with a negative cosmological constant? So, the answer is wait and see what we mean. So, the scalar field that was coming in those equations are the it comes from if you take particles which are being created. The main difference between this theory and standard Einstein theory is that in the Einstein theory all world lines start with the Big Bang. So, there is a singularity which where matter creation is conservation law is violated. In this case, matter creation is in a sense violated at every point wherever there is a new particle created, but the law of conservation of energy is still valid, because a negative energy field which is this a negative energy field which is this C field is already there. So, if you create more matter, you create more negative energy field, and together they balance out. So, there is no net violation of law of conservation of energy. But you can ask what is the typical particle which is created. The answer is the only mass scale that comes out of these basic equations is the Planck mass. So, C, H cross and G, you can create a mass out of that, and that is what will come. So, this is the answer. A mass of Planck particle is given in this fashion. Then creation of matter, the you can say that creation should preserve energy conservation, and that means the amount of energy which is created by creating a Planck particle is mp or mpc square. C is, you can little c you put equal to 1, and here on the right hand side is the negative energy field of same magnitude which is being created at the same time. So, this must be equal to that. Ci is the square of the gradient of C field. So, particles can be created only when the strength of the C field is high enough to match the rest mass energy of a created particle. So, imagine a universe which is filled with C field background, but the background strength is not very high. So, you cannot satisfy this relation at a typical point in the universe. But if you want to create matter, what you need is a local peak in the Ci, and that can be explained or achieved by gravitational collapse. So, if you have a collapsing massive object, it will pull in the C field along with it. So, it will rise to a level when this happens, and when this happens matter will be suddenly created, and so you get an explosive creation of matter, not homogeneous by any means. It happens only where there is a concentrated collection of particles already. So, in general the condition is not satisfied, but wherever massive object is there you will get it. So, if you take the Schwarzschild solution, for example, you can imagine 1 minus 2 gm over r coming from the mass which is locally present, which is producing the strong gravity. So, the C field strength rises close to the horizon of that particle of that mass as 1 over 1 minus 2 gm over r. So, as r goes to 2 gm, closer and closer to this 2 gm, you find that there is a chance of particles being created. And once they are created, because the C field is negative energy, it has got repulsive gravity, that means it pushes matter away. The particles which are created are blown out. So, you get a picture of a local creation of matter in an explosive fashion without a big bang, without a singularity rather. So, instead of big bang, you have got mini creation events which are mini bangs happening without singularity. So, let us in mass close to Schwarzschild radius, that means your creation will happen only in places of very strong gravitational field, and that is why one could say that there are singularity free explosions and what I call mini bangs all over the universe, which will produce a locally repulsive effect, pushing neighbors away, and that leads to an overall expansion of the universe. So, instead of a big bang producing the expansion, we have a this local mini bangs. And it is proposed that the universe is driven by such mini bangs rather than a singular once only big bang. So, this is the difference in the present theory and the standard cosmology. So, we can see cosmological models, how they are constructed. The simplest such model would be the steady state model, sorry, let me the simplest model would be the steady state model, in which a steady creation activity would drive the universe in an ever expanding mode with an exponential scale factor e to the t over p. That is, if creations were completely homogeneously taking place all over, but this is not going to happen, because we said that creation of matter takes place near massive objects. So, more realistic model has the universe expanding with a long term steady state scale factor, together with an oscillatory mode in which the universe has alternative phases of expansion and contraction. So, and the typical cycle works like this. So, why should we get expansion and contraction? So, first you have this expansion by mini creation events, and when this expansion happens, all the C field is diluted, because it goes down as 1 over 4th power of s as radiation does. So, if the C field strength goes down, it becomes more and more difficult to create new matter. So, you have creation centers become less and less effective, and expansion slows down and stops. So, you get a feedback in this fashion. And then the negative lambda starts to show its effect, because it is negative, it will start pulling matter in. And when this contraction starts, again it will lead to the strengthening of the C field background, and when this C field background is strengthened, creation centers become more effective, and contraction slows down, and because of repulsive C field, ultimately a bounce occurs and the universe starts expanding again. So, this is how you get cycles of expansion and contraction. So, we ask what is the consequence of this for various observational tests of the universe. So, one can say that this overall scale factor of such a universe is s of t x t over p, that is the overall expansion, into 1 plus eta cos 2 pi t over q. This is the oscillatory part. So, you have over a long term expansion together with oscillation. So, you have this parameter eta, it lies between 0 and 1, but does not reach either end. So, 1 plus eta cos 2 pi t over q is always a non-singular, non-zero quantity, and this p is much larger than q. So, that means the short term oscillations are faster than the long term expansion. So, I like to give analogy with say these prices of vegetables or other commodities in our environment. You find that vegetable prices go up and down depending on the season. So, you get these ups and downs, but if you examine the prices over 5 or 6 years, you find that they have significantly risen, even though they were going up and down. So, you have a t over p factor plus together with a oscillatory q factor coming in. So, you can see here the way that scale factor is plotted here against t over q. So, you get these oscillations and we are somewhere here at this stage. So, when we examine the local neighborhood, we find that the universe has been expanding, but if we went far enough, we should see a contracting phase. So, we should be able to, and I will come to the observational test later. but what you have to see is that this position will determine the local Hubble constant that you will have. So, comparison with observations, that is the most important. So, you have these explosive phenomena, and so one could say, unlike standard Big Bang cosmology, the QSSC has an intimate link to the high energy events in the universe through the mini creation events. So, anything in the form of explosions. So, here you have got gamma ray bursts or radio jets. All these are examples of ejection which Ambatsumian had noted. Then you have AGN, and one could even say that the clusters, normally one says that the virial theorem shows that there has to be dark matter. That is fine, but if these clusters are not virialized, but they are expanding because of local explosion, then you will again get virial theorem not satisfied, and you might wrongly conclude that if they are virialized, then there is dark matter, whereas an alternative explanation is possible. Then we did a structure formation exercise in the QSSC when Ali Nairi was here, my student. He did this computer analysis. What you do is, imagine that you have a cube of space, and in the cube you generate say 1,000,000 points which are randomly distributed, and you take a slice and let us say in that slice you have here 100,000 particles points randomly distributed. So, initially they would be all randomly distributed, whereas what you see here are voids and clustering. So, how did this happen? So, you say that a certain fraction of these within a given region, each point produces a neighbor due to creation of new matter. So, this you do by computer randomizing, and then you make the cube expand according to the QSSC, and take the inner cube of the same size as before, and again play the same game, produce a neighbor near randomly chosen subset of all these points, and go on doing this, expanding, creating, expanding, creating, and so on. Then you find that it is producing these voids and clustering, and then you can do the correlation function thing, 2-point correlation function for such a distribution, and you find that it produces the minus 1.8 observational result without having done much hard work on it. So, when we got this result, we here this is the kind of 2-point correlation function on a log scale. So, we were wondering what it means. So, because people do normally n-body simulations with lot of details of gravitational interaction. So, one could say that this is a zero gravity approximation when there is no gravitational interaction between these points. They are purely expanding randomly and randomly creating. So, this picture needs to be further worked on by putting interaction gravitationally. So, it is a problem that still needs to be done, but initial results looks rather encouraging. Then of course, once you start doing cosmology, you cannot leave the subject without talking about microwave background. So, CMBR is the relic starlight. What is the interpretation in this play is CMBR is a relic starlight left over from previous cycles. You saw that lower cycles, each cycle produces new stellar population, which burns out because the time taken is of the order of 50 giga years for each oscillation. So, stars are all burnt out. So, what happened to their radiation? So, what you have to do is calculate the radiation from all background stars from different cycles, do the calculation, and you find that if you were able to thermalize that radiation, you would get the answer as 2.7 K. So, now this coincidence has been there for many years, but has not been used by cosmologists for working on CMBR. So, let me just see because the question they ask themselves, what is the agency which thermalizes the starlight which is present? So, the answer is metallic whiskers that are formed from condensation of metallic vapors ejected by supernovae. So, we know that in supernovae metals are formed and the metals are ejected in the explosion, and these metals are of course not in solid form, they are vapor form because of the high temperature, and when they condense at reaching cooler region, they become more like needles, long thing. They do not condense as solid spheres. Now, you can ask what is this an epicycle or is it a real thing? The answer is it is a real thing. Laboratory experiments show that such vapors condense as whiskers and not as spherical balls. So, we are not assuming something which would help us, but this is something that has been actually found. So, the dust density typically of 10 to the minus 35 to 10 to the minus 34 grams per centimeter cube made of such whiskers is adequate to thermalize the relic starlight. These are the absorption factors, the coefficients compared at different wavelengths. So, you find that more absorption or thermalization is more effective at microwaves, and the amount of energy density that we computed gives us a temperature thermalized 2.7. And one could ask also, what about the power spectrum of inhomogeneities? How do you get them? Now, I want to give you one analogy. Supposing you have been watching game of cricket, and you watch cricket now, cricket in the evening, cricket next. So, you are only familiar with cricket as a game. Now, you are taken to see the game of football, and so they are playing football. Then you start asking, where is the no ball in this? Where is the boundary? How do you score a boundary? Now, obviously, the football game does not have these rules. It is played according to different rules. So, you do not expect the football game to have something which you are accustomed to watch by watching cricket. So, what I have to say is that when you see some of the explanations given by QSSC about microwave background, do not expect to see some of the corresponding things what you see in Big Bang. So, you ask how do you get this peak, because you do not have this particular epoch which gives this boomerang peak. So, you cannot get this peak. The answer is you get this peak because you have got clusters of stars, and that produces an inhomogeneity, and that inhomogeneity can be estimated, and it gives a peak at L equal to 200. So, it is a completely different explanation. It is nothing to do with your plasma and things happening in the high temperature phase. So, this is the point you have to keep in mind. Then supernovae, which I said I will come back to. How do you get high redshift supernovae dimmer than the local estimates, and that is basically what you have to see. So, you have here the standard Big Bang cosmology and standard and the QSSE curves for supernovae. What happens is, in this case the supernovae are the light from the supernova getting through these intergalactic whisker dust that we use for microwave background. So, same whisker dust would give you an absorption of supernovae and would produce a curve which is broadly in agreement. That means, you have got this same chi, almost the same chi-square. So, the answer is how much density of intergalactic dust is there. The answer is, if you can play the game one way or the other. You can go to microwave background and say, I want a microwave background in a thermalized form. So, I need a certain density of dust. Here you can say that for getting the right dimming, I need a certain density of dust, and the answer is both the densities are in the same ballpark, I mean they are comparable. So, you get a explanation of both with the same value of intergalactic dust. So, that is what I am saying, that taking the dust density as a free parameter, you can play with the data and you get the same answer. Then another test that could exist in this cosmology is gravitational waves, because there are explosions, and if the explosions are not spherically symmetric, you will get gravity waves, and those gravity waves should be detectable, and if these are being produced all over the universe by your mini creation events, then you should be able to get a gravitational wave background, and then you can ask how does it compare with the inflation background. So, now I want you to see the difference between this type of gravitational wave background and the inflation. Inflation background occurred long back. There is no way of testing it. You just assume with the given inflation you are getting this background. Here you have got these things going on all the time. So, this is a event which can be examined and in principle observed. So, there is a difference in the approach. So, this is the gravitational wave background. So, these have been estimated, and we are going through the process of doing it more precisely, so that one can have something to compare with in the realistic case when you start observing. So, there is a paper which already exists in 2006, and now we are in the process of working on a more detailed one. So, now I end by saying what are the distinguishing tests. So, high redshift objects, the QSSE does not have epochs of very large redshifts. So, if you can disprove quasi steady state cosmology if you produce an extragalactic redshift which is say more than 20, because up to 10 you can easily accommodate in those oscillations. 20 will be difficult, but more than 20 will be almost, and one might as well give up. So, if you can find such high redshift objects as a population, it will be interesting challenge for QSSC. Then near absence of dark matter, the density parameter omega naught exceeds unity in QSSC for flat models. Hence, if we do not find sufficient dark matter to make up for high omega, the simplest QSSC models are ruled out. So, you have here a how much dark matter you are able to find. Then this is the if we are having absorption of starlight to produce microwave background, if you are using microwaves to probe the universe, those probes should be more and more difficult because of the absorption of microwaves. So, you should not be able to find many cases of emitters of individual sources of microwave radiation. Then magnitudes of high redshift supernovae of type 1a, you can perhaps do more close study and see whether you can rule out or check whether you can agree with one of the two alternatives, QSSC and SBBC. Lack of evidence for explosions. The QSSC requires explosive creation of matter. If detailed examination of active regions of high energy production show lack of explosive outward motions, then QSSC loses its basic motivation. So, if you take active galactic nuclei or gamma ray bursts and you do not find things coming out, but rather things going in, then this would be a evidence against QSSC. Then observations of blue shifts. If you recall, we were showing the oscillatory part, and we said that we are somewhere here, and if you go back you will see contracting universe. So, at certain distance the peak of the previous oscillation would be higher than your present size, and that means anything coming from that galaxy over there will be blue shifted. So, you expect a blue shift of the order of 10% at the most, but if you have spectroscopy of very faint galaxies, which 30-meter telescope should be able to do, then we may be able to find, should be able to find blue shifted galaxies, and if they are found, then QSSC will be taken more seriously. But at this stage what I want to say is that here is a test and one should use that test rather than ignore the model. And observations of old stars. If you look at stars which are present in the galaxy today, and if you find there are stars older than 20 giga years, that is a safe value. I am quoting that 20 has no magic figure here, but if you look at the Big Bang age, it is about 14 to 15 giga years. So, you are above that. So, if you find such stars, then you will be hard put to defend the standard Big Bang cosmology. Now, we had done a study of a sample, and we found there are these red dots here, and these stars show, if you interpret them as their correct magnitudes, then you will find that they are about 20 giga-year old. But there is an escape clause, because the absorption because of dust is not known. So, you can very easily bring the age down by putting in sufficient absorption. So, we need more observations to of this kind to really do this more seriously. So, here you see the different HR, these HR diagram lines are drawn. 25 giga-years, 20 giga-years is this green one, and you can bring it down. So, this was the observations of old star. So, what I am leaving you with is that cosmology is is still an open subject, and there is need for some independent thinking. And this slide I like to show often is these geese going in a certain direction. So, these are the leading geese, and the rest all follow, but there should be some people, some geese going in some different directions, but they do not. At least human beings should be more independent than the geese. That is what I would like to say. Thank you very much. I will stop here.